Surprised my family with a vacation, but my entitled sister tried to hijack it and kick me off, so I cancelled her ticket and went without her. Now she's homeless, begging to come back. I, 29M, come from what you'd call a close-knit family, but let me tell you, that term is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. We're 3 siblings, me, my younger brother, 26M, and my younger sister Bonnie, 24F. Now, my brother and I? We're tight. We've got that typical brotherly bond. We can go from wrestling each other one minute to having each other's backs the next. But Bonnie? That's where things get complicated. Growing up, Bonnie was always the golden child. You know the type, the baby of the family who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. While my brother and I were expected to be responsible and mature, Bonnie got away with murder. Forgot to do her chores? Oh, she's just tired from all her activities. Got a C in math? Well, she's more of a creative type anyway. Meanwhile, if I so much as left a sock on the floor, you'd think I'd committed a capital offense. This dynamic created a rift between us that only grew wider as we got older. It's not that I don't love my sister, I do, she's family after all, but her sense of entitlement has always grated on me. And it's not just me. My brother's patience with her antics is even thinner than mine. Put them in a room together for more than 5 minutes, and you can bet your bottom dollar there'll be fireworks. Let me give you an example of the kind of stuff we're dealing with here. Last Christmas, Bonnie showed up empty-handed to our family gift exchange. Her excuse? I'm a broke college student, you guys understand, right? Fair enough, except she'd posted pictures of her brand new iPhone and designer boots on Instagram just days before. When my brother called her out on it, she burst into tears and accused him of being materialistic. Guess who our parents comforted? Yep, you guessed it, Bonnie. But despite all this, I've always tried to be the bigger person. I figured that as we all got older, things would even out. Bonnie would mature, our parents would start treating us more equally, and we'd all laugh about the past. Earlier this year, I hit the jackpot at work. I'm talking a bonus that made my eyes pop out of my head like a cartoon character. After the initial shock wore off, my first thought was, I want to do something nice for my family. Our parents' anniversary was coming up, and I had this brilliant idea, why not treat everyone to a family vacation? It had been years since we all went on a trip together. The last time was probably when Bonnie was still in high school, and even then, it was just a weekend at a nearby lake. This time, I wanted to go all out. I'm talking a week-long trip to Hawaii, all expenses paid. Flights, fancy resort, activities, the works. Why Hawaii, you ask? Well, that's where my parents went on their honeymoon. I thought it would be romantic for them to revisit the place where their journey began, this time with their children in tow. Plus, who doesn't love Hawaii? Sun, sand, surf, it's paradise on earth. When I announced the trip to my parents, you should have seen their faces. My mom actually teared up a little. Dad tried to play it cool, but I could tell he was over the moon. They started reminiscing about their honeymoon right there and then, sharing stories I'd never heard before. It was a beautiful moment, and I felt like the best son in the world. My brother's reaction was exactly what I expected. He gave me a bear hug and immediately started planning all the activities we could do together. Surfing, hiking, maybe even skydiving if we could convince our parents. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself getting even more excited about the trip. And then there was Bonnie. I'll admit, I was a bit apprehensive about her reaction. To my surprise, and relief, she seemed genuinely thrilled. She started rattling off all the things she wanted to do in the Instagram reels she was going to make. I rolled my eyes internally at that last bit, but hey, at least she was excited, right? For a moment there, I actually thought this trip might bring us all closer together. Maybe this was the turning point in our family dynamic I'd been hoping for. Oh, how naive I was. The problem started almost immediately. Bonnie, in her typical fashion, decided that since I was footing the bill, she should be in charge of planning the trip. She didn't ask, she demanded. You're not good at planning stuff, she told me, as if I hadn't successfully organized this entire vacation. Just hand it over to me, and I'll make sure we have the best time ever. Now, let me be clear, I had my reasons for wanting to plan this trip myself. First off, it was my treat. I wanted to surprise everyone with the activities I had lined up. But more importantly, I know my sister. When someone else is paying, Bonnie has champagne taste on a beer budget. If I let her take charge, we'd end up with gold-plated toilets and private jet tours of the islands. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, let me tell you about the last time we went out to dinner as a family. Bonnie ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, paired with a $200 bottle of wine. When the bill came, she conveniently forgot her wallet. But when it's her turn to treat, We're lucky if we get a Subway sandwich. I tried to explain this to my parents, but they, in their infinite wisdom, suggested a compromise. If you're busy, they said, maybe you could let Bonnie help with planning the activities. I told them that the activities were meant to be a surprise, hoping that would put an end to it. But Bonnie wasn't having it. She insisted on knowing everything in advance so she could pack appropriate outfits. I assured her that there was nothing that would catch her off guard, but she kept pushing. Looking back, I should have stood my ground, but I was so desperate to keep the peace that I eventually caved and gave her the itinerary. Big mistake. Huge. The moment Bonnie got her hands on the schedule, she went into full control freak mode. She called me immediately, tearing apart my carefully planned itinerary. According to her, everything needed to be rearranged to make everyone feel comfortable. And you know what? Some of her suggestions actually made sense. So, like an idiot, I agreed to make a few changes. That was all the encouragement Bonnie needed. Suddenly, she was acting like she was the mastermind behind the entire trip. She announced in the family group chat that she had taken over the planning and made some changes. At first, it wasn't too bad. She suggested we all wear matching outfits each day, which was kind of cute, I guess. But then things started to spiral. A week before the trip, I logged into my account to double-check some details, and my jaw hit the floor. Bonnie had canceled some of the activities I had booked, activities I had specifically chosen because I knew everyone would love them, and replaced them with her own preferences. She had even posted in the family chat about her executive decisions regarding the itinerary, instructing everyone to follow her lead. I was livid. This was supposed to be my gift to the family, and she had completely hijacked it. I called her, trying my best to keep my cool and reason with her. But Bonnie, in her infinite wisdom, was having none of it. I'm better at planning, she insisted. You should be grateful I'm helping. Grateful? Grateful? I was ready to explode. I told her in no uncertain terms that she had gone too far, that she needed to back off and let me handle the trip I was paying for. Her response? She accused me of being controlling and hung up on me. That night, my phone rang. It was my parents, and they didn't sound happy. Apparently, Bonnie had run to them with some sob story about how I was ruining everything. I tried to explain the situation without giving away the surprises I still had planned, but it quickly became clear whose side they were on. Bonnie's just excited about the trip, they said. You should let her have some control over it. They didn't seem to grasp, or care, that she had completely disregarded my efforts and my money. Their attitude was essentially, what does it matter who's planning or paying? We're family. I felt like I was taking crazy pills. Was I the only one who saw how messed up this situation was? In that moment, I was tempted to cancel the whole damn trip. But I took a deep breath and decided to take the high road. Fine, I thought. If Bonnie wants to be in charge so badly, let her handle it. I'll just sit back and try to enjoy myself, even if it's not the trip I had envisioned. But oh, my friends, the drama was far from over. 2 days ago, just 24 hours before we were set to leave, I received a notification that my tickets had been cancelled. At first, I thought it must be some kind of mistake. I called the airline in a panic, only to be told that the cancellation had come from my account. There was nothing they could do. I knew immediately who was behind this. Bonnie. I called her. When she answered, she had the audacity to act like nothing was wrong. Oh yeah, she giggled when I confronted her about the tickets. Isn't that funny? 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 I was seeing red at this point. Care to explain? And then she said. Okay, I hate to say this, she said, not sounding sorry at all. I know you were funding it and blah blah blah, but we can't have you on the trip, dude. You're too controlling, and your negative vibes would ruin the vacation for everyone. I have discussed this with everyone, and the family has agreed to dump you. You are not worth spoiling our trip. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The trip that I had paid for, that I had planned as a gift for my family, was now happening without me. Somehow, Bonnie had convinced everyone that I was the problem, and they had all agreed to go along with it. In that moment, something in me snapped. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. Without saying another word to Bonnie, I hung up and logged into my account. With a few clicks, I canceled her ticket and rebooked it in my name. Then, just to be safe, I changed the password on the account so she couldn't access it anymore or make any more changes to the travel itinerary. I typed out a message to the family group chat. Since Bonnie has decided I'm not welcome on the trip I paid for, I've canceled her ticket. If any of you wants to stay with her, I'll be happy to cancel your tickets too. The fallout was immediate. My phone started blowing up with notifications. The first call came from my brother. To my relief, he seemed just as shocked as I was about the whole situation. He swore up and down that he had no idea about Bonnie's plan to kick me off the trip. According to him, she had made the whole thing up. Neither he nor our parents had ever agreed to dump me. While I was still on the phone with my brother, trying to process this new information, my parents called. They were furious that I had canceled Bonnie's ticket, accusing me of being petty and vindictive. I stood my ground, explaining again that I had planned and paid for this trip as a gift to the family. If they didn't want me there, fine, I'd take a solo trip. But I wasn't about to hand over my hard-earned money and sacrifice myself for their comfort. To their credit, my parents seemed genuinely shocked when I told them about Bonnie canceling my ticket. They swore they had never asked her to do that. But they also weren't thrilled that I had retaliated by canceling hers. They kept insisting that we all needed to go on this trip together, as a family. I told them point blank that I wasn't going to let Bonnie dictate the terms of my generosity. If she wanted to plan her own trip, she was welcome to do so, with her own money. But this was my gift, and I wasn't going to be pushed out of it. Meanwhile, Bonnie was blowing up my phone with angry texts. She called me every name in the book, accusing me of ruining everything and being a terrible brother. I simply forwarded all her messages to our parents, letting them see for themselves what their precious baby girl was really like. My dad called me back a little while later, offering to mediate the situation. He suggested a conference call with Bonnie, where she would apologize to me, and then I could rebook her ticket. Part of me wanted to refuse outright. Why should I be the one to extend an olive branch when she had tried to kick me off my own trip? But another part of me was curious to see how this would play out. I knew Bonnie well enough to know that a genuine apology from her was about as likely as snow in Hawaii. So I agreed to the call. My dad added Bonnie to the line, but she was too angry to realize it was a conference call. Dad started off by telling her that she had acted meanly by canceling my tickets and that she should apologize. Before he could even finish his sentence, Bonnie exploded. Apologize to that jerk? My butt, she snapped. I did the right thing. He was going to ruin everything with his controlling attitude. There was a long, awkward silence after that. I could practically hear the gears turning in my dad's head as he realized that they had been enabling Bonnie's behavior all these years. Without another word, he hung up the call. I gave it a few minutes before calling him back. Do you now see how cruel your daughter is? I asked him. Or do you still want me to take her on this trip? He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, I'm torn between two of my children, he said. I don't know what to do. And you know what? Part of me felt bad for him. But a bigger part of me was just relieved that finally, my parents were seeing Bonnie for who she really was. As I sit here now, I can't help but feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, I know I've done the right thing. I refuse to be a doormat, to let Bonnie walk all over me and take advantage of my generosity. On the other hand, I'm sad that it's come to this. This wasn't how I envisioned this trip going at all. I wanted this to be a family trip, a chance for all of us to reconnect and create new memories together. And no matter how I feel about Bonnie, she is still part of the family. My brother and I might be able to enjoy the trip without her, but I know my parents will be upset by her absence. But you know what? Maybe this is the wake-up call our family needed. Maybe now my parents will finally see that their constant coddling of Bonnie has created a monster. Maybe this will be the push we all needed to address the issues that have been simmering under the surface for years. So that's where things stand right now. I'm packed and ready to go on a trip I planned and paid for, but the joy and excitement I once felt have been replaced by a knot of anxiety in my stomach. My brother is still coming, my parents are on the fence, and Bonnie. Well, Bonnie is probably plotting her revenge as we speak. Whatever happens next, at least I can say I finally stood up for myself. And hey, if all else fails, I hear Hawaii is beautiful this time of year, even if you're there alone. So guys, Ida for canceling my sister's trip that I bought with my own money? Update 1. Hey Reddit, up here with an update on the whole Hawaii trip fiasco because things got even messier, if you can believe it. So, remember how I canceled Bonnie's ticket after she tried to kick me off my own trip? Well, apparently, that was just the beginning of her master plan to ruin everything. After I told everyone family group chat, Bonnie went into full meltdown mode. We're talking nuclear level tantrum here. But instead of just accepting that she'd screwed up and maybe, I don't know, apologizing like a normal person, she decided to double down on the crazy. She tried to rope my brother into her schemes. One night, out of the blue, she calls him up with this brilliant idea. She pitches him on co-sponsoring the trip with her so they could all go without me. Yeah, you read that right. She wanted to team up with our brother to essentially steal the trip I'd planned and paid for. Now, my brother may not be perfect, but he's not an idiot. His first question was, naturally, do you even have that kind of money? Bonnie's response? No, I don't have it right now, But I'll pay you as soon as I can. I wish I could have seen my brother's face when she said that. I imagine it was a mix of disbelief and are you freaking kidding me right now? For context, Bonnie's idea of a job is working part-time at a local coffee shop. And when I say part-time, I mean she shows up when she feels like it, which isn't often. She's been fired from more jobs than I can count because she thinks showing up on time and actually working is beneath her. So yeah, her promise to pay as soon as she can is about as reliable as a chocolate teapot. My brother decided to see how far down this rabbit hole Bonnie was willing to go. He asked her if she was serious about this plan. Her response? Hell yeah. But if the Hawaii trip is too much to bear, we can go to Mexico. I swear, sometimes I wonder if Bonnie and I are actually related. Mexico? Mexico? She wanted to downgrade a fully paid trip to Hawaii to a budget trip to Mexico that my brother would have to fund? The audacity of my sister is truly breathtaking. My brother, who apparently has a much better poker face than I do, managed to keep it together long enough to point out the obvious. Why would he trade a free trip to Hawaii for a trip he'd have to pay for? And to add insult to injury, he knew he'd end up being Bonnie's personal Instagram photographer the whole time. Bonnie, true to form, didn't take this rejection well. She hung up on him and proceeded to blow up his phone with a barrage of insults that would make a sailor blush. Apparently, he's a selfish jerk and a mommy's boy for not wanting to bankroll her vacation. The irony is completely lost on her, I'm sure. But Bonnie wasn't done yet. Oh no, she still had one more card to play, the guilt trip. For the next few days, she was constantly at our parents' house, crying and carrying on about how we were abandoning her and tearing the family apart. She painted herself as this poor, innocent victim who was being cruelly excluded from a family vacation. To their credit, my parents stood their ground this time. They told her that if she wanted to come on the trip, she needed to apologize to me and make things right. Of course, in Bonnie's world, apologizing is something other people do. She refused, insisting that she had done nothing wrong and that I was the one who needed to apologize to her. For what, you ask? For always trying to make her look bad and buying everyone's love with money. Yeah, because apparently planning a nice family vacation is now a sinister plot to undermine her. My parents did try to play peacemaker. They called me, asking if I would consider being the bigger person and letting Bonnie come along. But I stood my ground. I told them that I wasn't going to reward Bonnie's behavior by giving in to her demands. If she wanted to come, she needed to own up to her actions and apologize. Simple as that. The day of the trip arrived, and it was tense, to say the least. My brother was excited, bouncing around like a kid on Christmas morning. My parents, though? They looked like they were heading to a funeral rather than a tropical paradise. As we boarded the plane, I could feel the weight of their disappointment. It was written all over their faces, we should all be here. The whole family. But you know what? That's on Bonnie, not me. I refuse to let her actions ruin this trip for everyone else. Once we landed in Hawaii, though, things started to turn around. It's hard to stay mad when you're surrounded by pristine beaches, crystal clear water, and breathtaking sunsets. I threw myself into making sure everyone had an amazing time. We went on a private luau, tried snorkeling, and even took a helicopter tour over the islands. Slowly but surely, I could see my parents starting to relax and enjoy themselves. But of course, Bonnie couldn't let us have this one nice thing without trying to ruin it. Throughout the week, my phone was constantly buzzing with angry messages from her. She'd swing wildly between rage, I hope you all get sunburned and eaten by sharks, and self-pity, I can't believe my own family would abandon me like this. My parents checked in with her occasionally, but even they were starting to see through her act. It's amazing how much clearer things become when you're not in the midst of one of Bonnie's drama storms. By the end of the trip, we had a suitcase full of incredible memories, and maybe a few too many souvenir t-shirts. My parents, while still sad that Bonnie wasn't there, admitted that they had a wonderful time. They even thanked me for all the effort I'd put into planning everything. When we got back home, I discovered that Bonnie had blocked me on all social media platforms. Apparently, seeing pictures of our trip was too much for her to handle. She was furious with our parents for choosing me over her and threatened to cut them off too. Of course, that threat rang a bit hollow considering she still lives in their house rent-free. She didn't spare our brother either, calling him a freeloader for going on the trip. Because apparently, in Bonnie's world, accepting a gift from your sibling is freeloading, but expecting your brother to fund your vacation is totally reasonable. The cherry on top of this drama Sunday? Bonnie declared that she never wanted to see me again. And you know what? I am okay with that. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around her, tired of her constant drama and entitlement. Don't get me wrong, it hurts. Despite everything, she's still my sister. I wish things could be different. but I refused to set myself on fire to keep her warm anymore. I stood up for myself, set a boundary, and stuck to it. If that makes me the bad guy in her story, so be it. Maybe one day Bonnie will grow up and realize that the world doesn't revolve around her. Then we might be able to mend our relationship. But until then, I'll hold on to the memories of that incredible trip, a trip that happened because I finally said enough to Bonnie's entitled behavior. And hey, if nothing else, at least I've got a killer tan and some great stories to tell. Silver linings, right? Update 2, alright, Reddit, it's been a few months since the great Hawaii debacle of 2024, and I'll be honest, I was hoping things would have calmed down by now. If anything, they've gotten even more ridiculous. After we got back from Hawaii, I dove headfirst into work. Partly because I had to make up for the time off, but also because I needed a break from all the family drama. I figured I'd give everyone some space to cool off and Bonnie would take this time to reflect on her actions and grow as a person. Yeah, I know. I'm a hopeless optimist. While I was busy adulting, my brother and I may have indulged in a bit of petty revenge. We flooded our social media with pictures from the trip. Think perfect sunsets, mai tais on the beach, all of us with big smiles, and only slightly sunburned faces. Was it mature? Probably not. Did it feel good? You bet your sweet bippy it did. Fast forward about 3 months. I finally had some time off and decided to swing by my parents' place for dinner. As I pulled up to the house, something felt off. It took me a minute to realize what it was. Bonnie's beat-up Volkswagen Beetle, a gift from our parents for her 21st birthday, wasn't in the driveway. When I got inside, the first thing I noticed was that Bonnie's room was empty. Not just she's out for the day empty, but someone moved out empty. The walls were bare, the closet was open and cleaned out, and there was a faint smell of disinfectant in the air. Despite everything, Bonnie is still my sister, and the idea of her out there on her own. Well, let's just say I've seen how she adulting before, and it's not pretty. I found my parents in the kitchen, looking lighter? Like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. When I asked about Bonnie, they exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Turns out, they'd finally done what they should have done years ago, they'd cut the cord. Now, before you start thinking my parents are heartless monsters who kicked their daughter to the curb, let me give you some context. This has been a long time coming. See, Bonnie has never been big on responsibility. Or work ethic. Or, basic human decency. She's bounced from job to job, never lasting more than a few months because apparently showing up on time and doing what you're paid to do is totally unfair. A year ago, my parents finally put their foot down and told Bonnie she needed to start paying rent if she wanted to keep living at home. You'd have thought they'd asked her to donate a kidney. She threw a fit worthy of a toddler, calling them every name in the book and accusing them of not loving her. But my dad stood firm. He told her she could either pay rent or find somewhere else to live. Faced with the prospect of actually having to support herself, Bonnie grudgingly agreed to pay rent. Wanna guess how many times she actually paid in the past year? 3. 3 whole months out of 12. Every month it was a new excuse. I had to buy new work clothes. My car needed repairs. Mercury was in retrograde and it's bad luck to pay rent during that time. I wish I was making this up. After we got back from Hawaii, Bonnie really ramped up the drama. She blew up at our parents, screaming about how they'd abandoned her and chosen me over her. When they tried to calm her down and gave her the gifts we'd brought back for her, she literally threw them back in their faces. That was the last straw for my dad. He told her to pack her bags, that he was done enabling her behavior. Bonnie, realizing she'd finally pushed too far, did a complete 180. Suddenly she was all tears and apologies, clinging to our mom and promising she'd do better, that she'd pay rent on time, that she'd get her act together. But my parents had finally wised up to her manipulation tactics. They stood firm. They helped her find a small apartment and even paid the first 2 months' rent for her. My dad also gave her a stern talking to about responsibility and growing up. I'll be honest, I thought this was still too generous. Bonnie was being handed an opportunity on a silver platter while the rest of us had to work our butts off. But I kept my mouth shut. At least she was out of the house, right? For the first couple of months, things seemed to be going okay. Bonnie would stop by for dinner occasionally, but nothing too out of the ordinary. But then my mom noticed a pattern. Bonnie was showing up more and more often, always around dinner time. And she started staying overnight more frequently. At first, my parents wrote it off as homesickness. But as the weeks went by and Bonnie's visits became more frequent and longer, they started to suspect something was up. Finally, after about 4 months of this, they sat Bonnie down for a chat. And that's when the truth came out. Bonnie hadn't paid a single month's rent since moving out. Not one. She'd been dodging her landlord, couch surfing with friends, and mooching meals off our parents to avoid going back to her apartment. When my mom asked her what she'd done with her salary, from the job she'd miraculously managed to keep for more than a month, Bonnie's response was peak Bonnie, "I had to buy shoes for work." I'm sorry, what? Unless she's working as a centipede impersonator, I'm pretty sure she didn't need to spend 3 months worth of rent on shoes. My mom, still trying to be supportive, offered to loan Bonnie some money to get caught up on rent. But Bonnie, in her infinite wisdom, insisted that she should just move back home instead. That's when my dad stepped in. He'd finally reached his limit. He told Bonnie in no uncertain terms that she was on her own now. No more bailouts, no more free meals, no more living at home. He even went as far as to say that if she showed up again asking for help, they wouldn't answer the door. Harsh? Maybe. But after years of enabling Bonnie's behavior, I think my parents finally realized that tough love was the only way forward. Of course, Bonnie didn't take this well. She tried every trick in her book, crying, pleading, guilt-tripping, even threatening to cut them out of her life, as if that was supposed to be a punishment. But my parents didn't cave. With our parents standing firm, Bonnie turned to her last resort, our brother. She called him up, spinning some sob story about how cruel and unfair everyone was being to her. My brother didn't fall for it. He told her straight up that he was barely making ends meet himself and couldn't help her financially. Then Bonnie, in a move that honestly impressed me with its audacity, asked if he'd be willing to borrow money from me and then give it to her. Why didn't she just ask me directly, you wonder? Well, according to Bonnie, asking me for help would boost my ego and make her feel like a loser. I mean, if the shoe fits, right? My brother, showing more patience than I would have even though they always fought together, suggested that if she needed money that badly, she should swallow her pride and ask me herself. Bonnie's response? She called him my bootlicker and accused him of being my pet who runs behind me for free meatloaf. I don't even know what that means, but I'm pretty sure it's not a compliment. So here we are. Bonnie is out on her own, probably couch surfing and dodging her landlord. My parents are finally standing firm on their boundaries. My brother and I are apparently in some sort of master-pet relationship that revolves around meatloaf, news to me, but okay. And me? I'm sitting here, marveling at the absolute chaos that is my family. I'm glad my parents have finally stopped enabling Bonnie's behavior. It's long overdue, and maybe this will be the wake-up call she needs to get her act together. I know some people might think I'm being too harsh. But she's family, they'll say. You can't just cut her off. And you know what? They're right. Bonnie is family. She'll always be my sister, no matter what. But being family doesn't give you a free pass to treat people like crap. It doesn't mean you get to manipulate and guilt trip and throw tantrums when you don't get your way. Being family should mean you treat each other with more love and respect, not less. I know this isn't the end of the Bonnie saga. Knowing her, she's probably already plotting her next move, figuring out how to worm her way back into our parents' house or guilt trip one of us into bailing her out. But for now, at least, there's a sense of peace in our family that's been missing for a long time. So that's where things stand now, Reddit. Bonnie's out on her own, my parents are sticking to their guns, and I'm here, sharing this saga with a bunch of internet strangers because, let's face it, sometimes life is so ridiculous that you just have to laugh. Thanks for listening to my rant. If there are any new developments in the Bonnie saga, I'll be sure to update. But for now, I'm going to go make some meatloaf. I hear it's great for bribing siblings. Update 3, well, you know what they say about karma? Turns out, it's got nothing on my sister Bonnie when it comes to making unexpected returns. It's been about 6 months since my last update. 6 blissful, drama-free months where I almost forgot what it was like to have my life turned upside down by Hurricane Bonnie. I should have known it was too good to last. It's a quiet Sunday afternoon. I'm at my parents' house for our newly instated weekly family dinner, sans Bonnie, of course. Mom's bustling around the kitchen, Dad's watching the game, and my brother and I are locked in an intense battle of wits. Okay, we're playing Mario Kart, but it gets pretty intense. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. We all freeze. Nobody ever knocks, we all have keys, and our friends and extended family know to call before dropping by. For a moment, we all just look at each other, silently asking, "You expecting someone?" Then we hear it. That voice. That whiny, entitled voice that has haunted my nightmares for the past year. "Mom? Dad? Is anyone home?" It's me, Bonnie. I swear, in that moment, you could have heard a pin drop. Hell, you could have heard an ant sneeze. We're all just staring at the door like it's about to burst open and unleash the zombie apocalypse. Dad's the first to move. He gets up, squares his shoulders like he's preparing for battle, and opens the door. And there she is. Bonnie. Looking like she's been through hell, to be honest. Her hair, which she usually spends hours styling, is pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her clothes, typically designer labels she can't afford, are wrinkled and look slept in. For a split second, I feel bad. Then she opens her mouth, and any warm fuzzy feelings I might have had evaporate faster than a snowball in Hawaii. "Daddy," she says, "I'm home." I have to hand it to my dad. He doesn't even flinch. He just stands there, blocking the doorway, and says in the calmest voice I've ever heard, "No, Bonnie. You're not." Bonnie's face crumples like she's been slapped. She tries to push past him, but Dad stands firm. "We talked about this, Bonnie," he says. "You're not welcome here anymore. Not until you get your act together." And then the waterworks start. Full on, Oscar-worthy sobs. "But Daddy," she wails, "I have nowhere else to go. They're going to arrest me if I don't pay my rent. Don't you love me anymore?" Now, I've seen Bonnie pull some manipulative stunts in her time, but this takes the cake. She's standing there, crying her eyes out, looking for all the world like a lost little girl instead of a grown woman who's repeatedly screwed over her own family. I can see Mom wavering. She's always had a soft spot for Bonnie, and seeing her baby girl in distress is clearly tearing her up. But before she can say anything, my brother steps in. "Arrest you?" he says, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "For not paying rent? Come on, Bonnie. We weren't born yesterday." Bonnie's tears dry up real quick at that. She glares at my brother like she's trying to set him on fire with her mind. "Stay out of this," she snaps. "This is between me and my parents." "Oh hell no. I've had enough." I stand up, walk over to the door, and look Bonnie straight in the eye. "No," I say, "this is between you and all of us. You don't get to waltz back in here and pretend the last year didn't happen. You don't get to manipulate Mom and Dad anymore. You made your choices, Bonnie. Now you have to live with them. Oh, look who it is. The golden child. Always so perfect, aren't you? Well, guess what? Nobody likes a goody two-shoes. You think you're so much better than me, but you're not. You're just a stuck-up jerk who doesn't know how to have fun." I'm about to retort when Dad cuts in. His voice is steel. "That's enough, Bonnie. You need to leave. Now." Bonnie looks at him, then at Mom, clearly hoping for some support. But Mom stays quiet. She looks torn, but she doesn't contradict Dad. "Fine," Bonnie spits. "Fine. I see how it is. You've all turned against me. Well, I don't need any of you. I'll figure this out on my own. Don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made." And with that, she turns on her heel and storms off. We watch her get into her beat-up Volkswagen, how she's still keeping that thing running is beyond me, and screech out of the driveway. For a long moment, we all just stand there in silence. Then Mom bursts into tears. Dad wraps her in a hug, murmuring comforting words. My brother and I exchange a look. We both know this isn't over. The rest of the evening is subdued. We eat dinner, but nobody's really tasting the food. We're all lost in our own thoughts, processing what just happened. Later, as I'm helping Mom clean up, she turns to me with tears in her eyes. "Did we do the right thing?" she asks. "Should we have let her stay?" I take a deep breath. "Mom," I say gently, "you know as well as I do that letting her stay wouldn't have solved anything. Bonnie needs to grow up and take responsibility for her actions. We can't keep enabling her behavior." Mom nods, but I can see the pain in her eyes. "I just worry about her," she says. "Is she eating enough? Does she have a place to sleep? What if something happens to her?" I give her a hug. "I know, Mom. I worry too. But Bonnie's an adult. We have to trust that she'll figure things out. And if she really wants to change, she knows what she needs to do." As I drove home that night, I couldn't help but chuckle. Who needs soap operas when you've got family like mine? I should really start writing this stuff down. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll turn it into a book. Living with Hurricane Bonnie, a survival guide for the chronically entitled sibling. Bestseller material right there, folks. Bestseller material. So that's the latest in the Bonnie saga, Reddit. Will I ever master the blue shell in Mario Kart? Seriously, that thing is the bane of my existence. Thanks for listening, Reddit. Your support and advice have been a lifeline through all this craziness. Here's hoping the next update will be about Bonnie turning her life around and becoming a productive member of society. But let's be real. It'll probably be about her trying to sell essential oils or joining a cult or something equally ridiculous. Catch you on the flip side, Reddit. I'm off to practice my Mario Kart skills. Gotta be prepared for the next family showdown, after all.
Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. If you loved this story, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more shocking tales of family drama and Reddit gold. Want to hear another crazy story? Click the video right here. Until next time, stay curious.